Man, this is hard. Hot and I'm tired. But you know what? That's what character is built when things are hard. That's why I love Vince Hawkins. He's had it tough, he's had it hard, but overcame. Grew up in rural Louisiana, in the deep south where racism was strong. Ended up going to high school at St. Augustine in New Orleans. Man, he'll tell you some crazy stories what happened about racism even during football games. And then he went on to go play 2 years out of Northwest Washington for football, where he ended up becoming part of the Hall of Fame out there. Then he played 2 years for University of Nebraska under the legendary coach Tom Osborne. He's got some great stories that really helped him change there. And then, man, he's been in ministry for over 20 years. Been married to his lovely and amazing wife, Robin. And if you watched Kurt's interview, you know how much this man means to me. I wouldn't be the man I am today if it wasn't for his influence. And I tell you what, he's certified other strong men, PhDs, church leaders, business leaders, man, say that Vince is the real deal. So listen to what he has to say, because you know what? The ball is in your court, whether you know it or not. What you gonna do with it? The heart is deep. You're so unique. You have to find the truth underneath. Let's take some time to stop and be. Vincent Hawkins, the legend.
What's up, Lawrence? It's good to see you, man. I don't know about legend. I'm just glad to be alive, brother. Thankful to Jesus. So,
I grew up in Japan, and I had a very different experience about understanding my blackness. And so you grew up in Louisiana, like, what was that like? And I guess, when did you realize that, oh, I'm different because I'm black and I'm being treated different because I'm black?
Good question. Well, I think, I grew up in a pretty rural area. I was born in a pretty rural area in Louisiana. It's a little town, Montpelier, Louisiana. Closest town, big town is Amite, Louisiana. So that's where I was born. And I grew up in a little whole neighborhood back there where mostly relatives were. So there were, Caucasian folks who owned land back in our area, and they would come back there, they would farm it or log it or different things. And so we rarely saw anyone non-black unless it was someone coming back there to do something on their property. And I remember even as a little boy, that people, African Americans in that area, I mean, it was pretty rural and pretty, say, behind the times. I mean, and people were very much, almost seemed intimidated or, kind of like, yes, sir, yes, sir. I mean, it was very much kind of a subservient, almost felt like a slave mentality. And I thought that was odd, right, or weird. As a little boy, fast forward, I moved to New Orleans, Louisiana, a little bit more progressive city, bigger city. And then I began to feel like there was definitely a division. In fact, the neighborhood I lived in, Lawrence, the first neighborhood we lived in was actually a park about a block from my house. And on one side of the park was all black people. And if you go in the park, it was a big park. You go on the other side, it got whiter.
Interesting.
And the park kind of was this place where we meet. Now, there were kids from around the area that played ball. The parks were big. Kids would play ball in the park. So we'd have teams, and the teams were diverse for the most part, mixed kids. But you always felt like you were a little bit different. Like you were treated a little bit different. Like people talked to you a little bit different as a little boy. And but I have one story, if you don't mind, I'll tell you. One day I walked to that park, and I must have been maybe 8 or 9 years old, Lawrence. And I don't remember how old I was. I think I blocked this out. And I'm at the park, a block from my house, and I'm out there playing. And when I got to go to the park, my mother was very much like, "Don't you leave that park," One day I saw a little white kid out there. Looked to be about my age. We played together, no problem. Day or two later, he's out there again. We're playing together, no problem. We kind of become friends. So we're playing together. We walk around the park. I mean, we're just playing, hanging out. And then one day he shows up there with his sister, who was a giant girl. From my perspective, I was 8 or 9. She probably was a teenager. And I hadn't hit puberty yet, so she was a giant to me. And they wanted to go for a walk out of the park. And I remember feeling like I shouldn't leave this park, but I did. And then we're walking a little further, and I feel myself kind of getting further away from the park, but I still know how to get home. So I'm kind of, able to trace, like, okay, I'm going to go down that block, that block. And then we end up in this schoolyard, or this, like, in front of this Catholic church, which is a school also. And it seemed like I remember a third kid showing up, and they start beating me up, pushing me, fighting me, and they overcome me eventually. And, and I kind of end up falling down, and they're kicking me and spitting on me and calling me the N-word, all kind of names. And I just, and eventually they get me off my feet. And they take me to this dumpster, and they throw me in this dumpster. And there was bags in the dumpster. I don't remember, like, being messy food or there's bags or whatever. And they shut the lid. And so, I'm in there crying, and, I go to open the lid, and they start throwing rocks at me. So I close the lid. And then they start walking a little further, and every time I open the lid, they would turn around and throw rocks at me. It was like a bad game of red light, green light. You know that game, 1, 2, 3, red light, except they're walking away from me, and they're throwing rocks at me. And then they walk a little further, and I open the lid, and they throw more rocks at me. Well, eventually, they weren't very smart, because they got a little further from me, like out of like throwing distance. So at least they underestimated their throwing strength. I peeked out, saw them, popped this lid off. They threw rocks. They might have hit me, but they didn't hurt me. And I bolted home. And I don't think I ever told my mom about that. I really thought I shouldn't have left that park, is what I thought.
She's gonna whoop you.
But yes, a whipping would have been, yeah. But I remember, Lawrence, that day feeling like, in my heart, and this is about the time, believe it or not, this is about the time the movie Roots is coming out. And so I would begin to develop a certain kind of feeling toward white people. And I just lumped them all together. I hate white people. And, I continued to play sports, moved to another neighborhood that was all black. Never saw any black white people. But the general conversation is white folks are bad, they're this or that. That's how we felt. So that played in my narrative most of my life. I was only on all black teams from there on out. When there was a white team, we wanted to hurt them in sports, beat them. And I went to an all boys, all black high school. And we had broken into that Catholic league. And so we were kind of hated, St. Augustine High School. And again, it was about beating the white teams, and we had to prove we were better. We were more powerful, and that was what we felt. That's how that kind of became my narrative until I graduated from high school and went to college, where I was even willing to give someone non-black a chance.
Wow.
And even when I was in college, I was very distrustful. But believe it or not, my first roommate was a white guy. And then my quarterback became my roommate. And he and I became great friends, and we're good friends to this day.
Because I remember some of the stories you told about the football games, and like how, there was definitely the whites definitely wanted your team to lose, and sometimes manipulated the game to make that happen.
Yeah, dude, we had a crazy game that my teammates still talk about to this day. It was a quarterfinal game. We were the best team in the state. The eventual state champions, we beat 34-0 in the regular season. But we went down to this little town, man, and we get down there, and never in my life had I ever experienced this. Like, we come out of the locker room, a cross is burning in front of our locker room, trying to intimidate us. And I remember all of us like, we're going to kill these. we were just like, oh yeah? Now we're going to kill your kids. So that's what we thought. But then in the fourth quarter, they shut the clock off on us, and it was such a horrible, and we lost, didn't win state, and it is, my teammates still talk about that. It was like, we get together, I'm like, dude, I don't want to talk about that game. So that was an off experience on many levels, but that wasn't uncommon in the South. It didn't just happen to us. Trying to intimidate black folks. you eventually had to learn how, you're not going to intimidate me. I had to figure that out. So yeah, part of my dislike or my hatred or my rebelliousness or my stubbornness or you're not going to intimidate me, I'm going to intimidate you. It's kind of how I felt I needed to be in life. But no doubt, all of that was just, probably some fear deep down inside responding in violence. So
Right. Protection.
there you go.
Well, I got to follow up on that because, so from my frame of reference, my dad, if anybody would have done something like that, he would have lost his temper, corralled other parents, contacted the police, contacted the school board. Hey, figure out who did this. Let's prosecute them, discipline them. Like, hey, this is not something that they're just going to let go. But it sounds like you said it was a common thing that happened. So I guess like,
different day, man. It was a different day, different time. I mean, what are you going to do, In those days, obviously the school was going to say, we didn't do that. We didn't know that happened. Oh my God, we're sorry. Now today, that would be headline news.
they were all
The
losing their
principal
job.
would be getting fired. The coaches would be getting, the program would be getting dropped. Yeah, it was a different day. I'll just say that. So, yeah.
And even fueling that narrative even more, like as you said, though, like I cannot trust white people.
Oh yeah. That's how you dealt with those things in those days. You burn inwardly and you waited for the opportunity to get back, And so, yeah, I'm just gonna pay life back. I'm gonna pay people back. That's kind of how that became sort of my mantra. I'm gonna make it anyway. I'm gonna get better, right? And so it fueled us in good ways, but also in some pretty negative ways.
I bet.
Obviously, so.
Especially at that age, when you're young, teenage, fueled with passion and emotion. Did football become more of it had to be more than just a game to you then?
Well, my school helped make it more than that. My high school, it really, they were teaching us lessons of life on how to survive as young black men in the world, how to be better. A lot of those guys, some of those guys went on to become, they're important. We've had a few mayors of New Orleans come out of my high school, became significant, influential people in New Orleans. And so, yeah, it was a place of a lot of pride. And I just think I was blessed to be able to go. I couldn't afford to go there. I was, it was just God working it out and for me to go there. But I think it gave me some things that I probably would have just lacked had I just only lived with that 9-year experience. You know what I'm saying? It helped put that in context a little bit and go, I'm gonna rise. Anyway, that's how I viewed it before becoming a Christian.
So I want to fast forward a little bit to college.
Yeah.
So what was it like to be coached by a white guy, Tom Osborne?
That's a good question. My community college coach was a guy named Jack Buck who coached me as well, and took me to his property and let me haul hay with him and eat in his house, and he was a good guy. God's like restoring my trust in non-black people, I think, through this process as I look back at it now. But at that time, D1 football, if you're going to play D1 football in the early 90s, you're playing for a white coach, probably. So that's the bottom line. If you're going to play, I don't know if there were any African-American coaches in D1 football in those days. Maybe there were. I just can't remember. But there weren't many. And Tom Osborne obviously was a legend. Tom Osborne, we called him T.O. He was a brilliant coach, without a doubt. But he was a legitimately good man. Just a soft-hearted, good man. When I met him, as I was around him, it was hard for me to believe. I had never been around a coach that wasn't like, roar. Coach Osborne was the calmest guy. I'm going, does this guy ever get worked up about anything? And he was a spiritual guy. He taught his Sunday school class every Sunday at his church. And you never heard him say a bad word. If he said, "Dadgummit," or Judas Priest, then you knew, uh-oh, T.O.'s mad, man. You know what I mean? So, but he just he wasn't an angry guy. Now his assistants, they're crazy. He was the straight man, and he had a lot of crazy people around him. but some of the assistants were definitely like, oh, screaming. So, but he at the top was very even kill and poised. So I learned a lot from him just in leadership, and he knew your name. He knew everybody's name. He took time to know names, and he'd come out on the field, walk over, say your name. How you doing? I mean, even in practice, he would come over. And pre-game, he'd come over and touch every player and call our name and, hey, let's focus. I mean, he was a good leader of young men from my perspective, right? And that, again, that helped to change my perspective a little bit. I think it was God doing it, putting the right people in my life at the right time.
Can you talk a little bit more about how did you get your heart to open up and love people different from you?
I didn't realize that God was opening my heart up to different people as I was, there at that community college and all of these things that were going on. And I was in Spokane with the nice white people. As I told my mom, these are nice white people, Mom. They're not like the crazy white people in Louisiana. So and obviously, this was how I was viewing the world at that time. But it was part of God softening me. Like without that, I would have just been angry. You know what I mean? And so by the time Kurt and Aaron meet me, and Aaron Brefford invited me to a Bible talk, and I walked in there, and I might have been one of the only black guys in there. Maybe there was I don't remember. And I remember just thinking, whatever. I think I took up most of the time, said my piece, being arrogant probably. And I think that I was no longer afraid. I felt, maybe it was false confidence, but I felt somewhat confident. Probably when I should not have. But and then when I studied the Bible, it was interesting because I reached the point in my Bible studies when I was going to have to make some changes to some of my how I was living, right? Some things I was doing that were not godly. A lot of relationships with girls and clubs and just all the college football trimmings, I guess. So, but, and I remember when I didn't want to make those changes, I remember thinking, man, these guys are white anyway, man. You know what I mean? Like, why you studying the Bible with these white guys? You know what I mean? So I wanted to make an issue out of the fact that they were white because I didn't want to change. It was like, man, these white boys, they don't know nothing about me. But they were like coming at me with the Bible. And I'd get together with them, and I'd kind of be like, yeah. And then they started reading scripture, and it's like, oh, man. This is like...
Well, that's in the Bible?
Man. It's like... And they were... And listen, Kurt was not intimidated, He would just go after me, which I appreciate that, he wasn't trying to dance around, this somewhat, trying to be intimidating, angry, really confused, young black kid. And he just said, he went after it. He had biblical expectations. And so honestly, I appreciated their authenticity. I appreciated their frankness. I appreciated the truth and them not compromising. And I think had they given me a way out, I would have taken it. Like, they'd been like, oh, you can just maybe just date like 2 girls or something crazy, Can you just get one? I mean, whatever. Any kind of compromises would have been sweet. Because I knew how to make a mile out of an inch, trust me. So anyway, that was the way God did it. And I think I just trusted them more, Lawrence. The more honest they were with me, the more real they were with me, it was helpful. It was God moving through his word, through these guys. And I pretty soon began to focus more on the black and white in the Bible than the black and white between us. And that was a miracle.
So I listened to your podcast you have with Bill, so the Vincent Bill podcast.
Yeah.
And I was shocked because in there, you said that you've been praying for Derek Chauvin, if I'm saying this right. The police officer that knelt on George Floyd's neck.
Yeah.
Which ended up killing him.
Yeah.
And when I heard that you prayed for him, I was like, first I was shocked. I was like, whoa, I've never even prayed for that. I didn't even think to, because I was angry towards him and I had my feelings.
Yeah.
When I heard you pray to him, I was just blown away. I even told my wife, like, Erica, I asked her, like, hey, babe, have you prayed for Derek Chauvin? Why are you praying for Derek Chauvin, and what motivated you to do that?
Well, I mean, like everybody else, I watched that. I was sickened. I cried. I watched the funeral, and I didn't want to hear. What I wanted to hear is his family talk about him. Like, that's why I watched. I didn't want to hear all the other stuff personally. Okay, I wanted to hear his family talk about him because they humanized him. They talked about Big Perry and they told these stories, and I was kind of frustrated because people were patting him on the back and trying to get them to move on. I'm going, this is the best part of this. Tell everybody else to shut up. We don't want to hear from them. I mean, I personally wanted to hear from the family because they were humanizing him, and the rest of them were, I don't know what they were doing. So, but my heart broke, and but I began to think, like, I remember seeing all this chaos and thinking, there's one guy. Now, obviously, he didn't start this. This goes back longer. But if you're that one guy that goes, what have I done? I mean, you're going to go, what on earth did I do? And it ain't funny, but I just thought, I began thinking about his wife. Immediately came out, his wife divorced him. And I'm just thinking his family's just going, wow.
Yeah.
What's your last name? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I would change my name back to Salisbury. I just begin to think, wow, this guy he's a demon. I mean, that's how he was being viewed and talked about and treated. And it just hit me like, well, I wonder where Jesus would be right now. I wonder if Jesus would go visit him. I thought, well, I don't know, but I can pray for the guy. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. So I thought, shame on me if I can't pray for my enemies.
Wow.
Because that is what Jesus said. And even when I say my enemies, I mean, the reality is that there was nothing done to me personally,
right,
although I personally was hurt, personally affected. But yeah, he was an enemy of sorts. And I thought, I need to pray for him because it ain't right for me to be angry with him. That ain't right either. It's not right for me to hate him. So I just had to wrestle with all of that. And so I just thought, I don't know what to do with it. So I just pray for him. So I don't know what's going to become of that, but might help my heart. Hope it'll help his heart. Hope whatever needs to happen, he'll be able to be at peace with whatever God does to him, for him. So, and that way, whatever happens, not my will, your will be done, God.
Another great inspiration there about internalizing, because when I think about having to pray for him, it forces me to deal with my feelings and how I feel about him. And then it challenges me, like, hey, am I going to want what's best for him? Yes, I want justice. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
No doubt. But then at the end of the day, like, am I going to treat him as a human?
It's not easy.
No.
Trust me, it's not easy. So, you just gotta do the good you ought to do.
Right.
And,
give God some space. Let God work too.
Oh, yeah.
Let God do something.
And you know what, man? Sometimes, I don't know, in some crazy way, man, praying maybe this guy, maybe he turns himself in. Maybe he doesn't, I don't know what God's going to do. You know what I mean? Maybe he has a change of heart and you go, you know what, man, I was wrong. Or whatever the case is. But I want justice like everyone else, but I want God to be the just one.
Yeah. My last question, Vince, is so how do you process the racism that's still happening today?
And we were actually kind of doing a little work in Luke chapter 4 today at our staff meeting. And I was doing a devotion on this, and we usually talk about the passage a little bit. And there, when Satan tempts Jesus with all the kingdoms of the world, and there's a moment when he says, I can give it to you because it's been given to me, he says. And, Bill Molden was bringing this point out today that, Satan really does have the kingdoms of the world. All the power-hungry kingdoms, the power-grabbing kingdoms. And Jesus has one kingdom. And he's the king of that. And I can see Satan going, you got your one little kingdom, it ain't nothing. You never gonna have, but look at all these kingdoms I got. And Jesus going, I'm getting ready to flip this whole thing upside down. You know what I mean? You got no idea. I'm getting ready to be a boss. You know what I mean? I'm getting ready to turn over the tables. I'm changing the game. My kingdom, it will endure forever. It will crush all of those other kingdoms. And so Jesus, he created a kingdom that far surpasses. So when you think about it, Satan really does own all the other kingdoms. They're his. So why get frustrated about trying to change Satan's kingdom?
Wow.
Why not do the work of going, I want to be in the one kingdom that's going to crush all those other kingdoms? So how do I deal with whatever's going on in these other kingdoms? I just go, well, they belong to Satan, so what else do you expect? What do you expect? So how do I deal with it? I just got to be at peace with Satan's got his kingdom, but Jesus has got his kingdom.
Come on.
And that's the one I have been blessed to be a part of. I'm not worthy. I'm not deserving. And sometimes, unfortunately, that doesn't feel like enough. What we really want is all the other kingdoms, too. We want all that other stuff. And I tell you what, as long as we want that power, I think we're going to remain disappointed. We are going to remain disappointed. And I don't want to live the rest of my life just being disappointed. So how do I wrestle with it? How do I deal with it? That's part of it. Just understanding that, man, God allowed me into his kingdom through two very, it was God, all part of my journey, but through two very unlikely dudes that I would never have given a time of day. But God knew what he was doing. So that's just my story, right, of how he's walked me through. And every time I've gotten off, he's rerouted me back, right, and brought me back again and brought me back again. But then there's two white guys late one night, midnight, at a lake in Lincoln, Nebraska, take me out in February and baptize me because I wanted to do it outside. And I came up a new man. And so that day I had to let go of the other kingdoms. And it ain't easy because every now and then I want a piece of it. I want power. I want to be somebody. I want to be strong. I want to be great. I want to be awesome. I want to be amazing. I want to be on top of the world. I want to be a legend. You know what I'm saying? But God just going, yeah, shut up. God's going, you know what I mean? Listen, I got this. all that's going to do is leave you with a lot of stress and anxiety. I created you to be at peace. And so, anyway, so that's how I'm trying to deal with it, Lawrence. But I can be honest with you, it's a process. I'm still maturing. I wish I was there. I'm gonna learn something else tomorrow, next week, the next month, and I just have to keep growing. But today, this is where I'm at. So
I love that. Vince, I need you so much.
I need you, brother.
I'm so grateful for men like you who've overcome, who've faced challenges, found ways to deal with it. And like, man, you're a living example for me and many others. So I need your wisdom. I need your example. Thank you so much for being who you are, brother.
Lawrence, you have no idea. I love you and Erica, your kids. So proud of you. The man you are, the man you've become. From that kid I met on campus, who was, obviously struggling with his own identity.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you have landed in a great place. And bro, the boundaries have fallen in pleasant places for you for sure. So I'm just super proud of you.